2022 was an exciting year at the movies. Blockbusters finally came back full swing after 2 years of uncertainty, reaffirming the theatrical experience as the premier method of moviegoing, while independent and international productions made splashes all year round. While it may not be the best year for films in recent memory, it sure beats the hell out of either of the past two this decade, so there's no shortage of fantastic films to discuss. That's partly why it took me so long to put this video together. I wanted to make sure I'd gotten my hands on pretty much every film I could see that seemed promising or likely to make this list. I didn't want to go overboard with the wait. I still wanted the video to come out sometime when discussing 2022 films is something people still care about, but I think my delayed reaction has given me a lot of time to consider a lot of great films. So many great films, in fact, that I've been struggling for ages trying to figure out how best to structure this video. A top 10 just wouldn't cut it. So do I do a top 15? Top 20? Top 50? Well, most of you already don't watch my videos past about 6 minutes, and I still want to talk about most of these movies in brief, so here's what we're going to do. I'm going to present my top 30 films of 2022, and the first half or so will be reserved for very brief thoughts. The further we go, the more I'll elaborate on each film. Sound good? Then let's get to it. Here are the top 30 films of 2022. Number 30. Holy Spider. Utilizing the genre trappings of a gnarly investigative thriller, Ali Abbasi's film is a straightforward and haunting indictment of a notable lack of justice and morality in aspects of Iranian society. Easily more complex in what it suggests than what it actually says, but a stirring genre piece nonetheless. Number 29. The Blue Captain. Definitely not one of the most original topics a film could cover today, with its take on repressed homosexuality and dying loved ones, but Mariam Touzani tells a tale of intimate tenderness with a surprisingly piercing dynamic at its center. One of the most criminally unseen dramas of last year, with a lot to say about how we love rather than who. Number 28. Pacifiction. Albert Serra gives us a slow-burning evocation of Antonioni that relishes in the answers nobody has. Paranoia seeps through every frame of the film's lush Polynesian setting, leaving you in constant wonderment at whether or not this place is the host of something bigger. Number 27. Pearl. The second of Ty West's A24 slashers this year proved to be easily the more engrossing, with a flair for 50s style melodrama punctuating its more gruesome moments. A true flexing moment for Mia Goth, who absorbs every second of the spotlight in much the same way her character dreams to do. Number 26. Showing Up. It's been almost a year since I've seen Kelly Reichardt's latest, and as minimalistic as the film is, not a week has gone by that I haven't thought about its warmth and respect for the low-stakes world of its characters. Reichardt and Michelle Williams are, as always, a match made in heaven here, with the actress giving easily her most engaging performance of last year. Ahem. Number 25. Puss in Boots: The Last Wish. Talk about blindsiding. I don't think anyone was expecting the Puss in Boots sequel from some upstart director to be even remotely good, let alone the best animated exploration of existentialism in the same year that Guillermo del Toro finally released his stop-motion Pinocchio movie. A real treat for both the eye and the mind. Obviously, this isn't the first time animation has been used to explore these ideas, but rarely is it made this damn fun. Number 24. The Batman. Really getting all the normie shit out of the way here, but I'll say upfront that I wasn't really excited for yet another Batman movie. But unlike certain other films, Matt Reeves takes his noir influences and actually builds on them rather than ripping them off, making for a straight-up detective thriller with a heightened sense of atmosphere and palpable tension. Number 23. RMN. This wasn't nearly as widespread in its acclaim as Cristian Mungiu's last few films, which I can understand given how broad its critiques are in comparison to the hyper-specificity of the movies that made him Romania's most revered filmmaker. That said, there's still something so effectively chilling and meticulous about how Mungiu puts RMN together. Even if the thoughts it provokes aren't entirely novel, they're still prescient enough to warrant examination in the first place. Number 22. All the Beauty and the Bloodshed. Never mind Puss in Boots, this may actually be the biggest surprise of the year for me, because I normally have such a low tolerance for Laura Poitras' documentaries. To me, she has an unparalleled ability to take such intriguing subject matter and suck the life right out of it, but All the Beauty and the Bloodshed maintains the humanity of Nan Goldin and the opioid crisis to a point of investment not only unimaginable for Poitras, but also of a very high standard for documentary filmmaking in general. Number 21. 3,000 Years of Longing. Is it a mess? Probably, but George Miller's fantastical ode to love in the strangest places finds such an appropriate mixture of ambition and gentle warmth that you can't help but marvel at the attempt. Luckily, the attempt was matched by the efforts put into the final product, and the result is an expansive love story the likes of which we probably won't see again anytime soon. Number 20. Glass Onion. I know this is basically just a more expensive retread of Knives Out's blueprint, but I'm still struck by how easily Rian Johnson revels in manipulating viewers' expectations, all the while staying just close enough within the boundaries of tolerance that we never get annoyed with it. A hilarious mystery that makes use of its increased budget and keeps you guessing until the very end. What more do you need? 19. Eel. Displaying the sort of technical wizardry you can't hope for from most 30-year-olds, let alone a filmmaker in his 80s, Jerzy Skolimowski's simple story of a simple donkey is, appropriately, simple in its scope, but undoubtedly alluring in its scale. A film of few characters and even fewer words, EO pushes the boundaries of technology in ways that remind you just what cinema can do with an empathetic eye. Number 18. The Northman. Clearly a huge downgrade from Robert Eggers' usual fare, The Northman is nevertheless a grimy, brutal taste of mythology blended with history, utilizing its auteur's massive budget in ways that every film lover only wishes could be the norm. About as simple a revenge tale as you can get, Eggers still lets this film ooze with personality and entertainment value without sacrificing the painstaking vision we've all come to love him for. 17. No Bears. If nothing else, this film pretty much cements Jafar Panahi as Abbas Kiarostami's successor, showing off an understanding of humanity and filmic line blurring rarely seen in recent years. Through its placement of parallel storylines, No Bears finds Panahi examining, as many Iranian filmmakers do, tradition and duty, all the while exploring those themes in ways that put himself on the front lines of questioning, both within the narrative and from a meta perspective, to leave questions stirring in your head for days on end. 16. Triangle of Sadness. Ah yes, the big one. I've made no secret of my preference for a good handful of movies to win last year's Palme d'Or, and obviously we're going to get into a few of them here, but I've also made no secret of just how entertaining Ruben Östlund can be in the simplicity of his social critiques. If Triangle of Sadness has little to offer in terms of the novelty of its message, at least it presents more than enough novelty in the jokes it tells to relay that message. Undeniably a singular vision, even if that vision may put off some more stern viewers. Number 15. One Fine Morning. Mia Hansen-Løve is all about finding the beauty of reality, or rather the reality of beauty. In One Fine Morning, through the help of some incredible, heartbreaking performances from Léa Seydoux and Pascal Gregory, Hansen-Løve makes us feel as though we've been sharing in these people's lives from the very beginning, joining them on this crushing journey. The kind of small-scale film that gradually chips away at your soul, leaving you with little room to recover by the time you realize anything has changed at all. 14. Nope. This is what we talk about when we say we want to see Jordan Peele reach his full potential. While not as well-rounded overall as his debut Get Out, Nope still finds Peele fleshing out his thematic playground in ways that are both hilarious and spine-tingling. In terms of craft, Peele is at the top of his game here, with visuals and sound design reminiscent of early Spielberg, with a social edge that firmly places him in the modern day while, at the same time, pointing a watchful eye on the impacts of recent history. 13. Return to Seoul. The more I think about Davey Chu's film, the harder I find it to talk about it. There's just something so intangible and unreachable about Return to Seoul that makes it entirely compelling. Maybe that's because I don't personally relate to its story of adoption and displacement, but Chu still finds this incredible way to frame his story with enough intrigue that the wordless pauses communicate more than any conversation ever could. Park Ji-min is absolutely stunning in the role that forces you to keep guessing, and that's largely because she convinces you that she too is guessing all along the way. Keeping one foot on your throat and never letting up, Return to Seoul is exactly the kind of film that should put its burgeoning filmmaker on the map. Number 12. Tori and Lokita. It's no surprise how much of a sucker I am for the Dardenne brothers, as I find them to be among the only directors who use that sort of handheld, shaky filmmaking to serve a greater purpose of intimacy with their downtrodden characters. Because of the endless empathy they have for their characters, films like this never come across as exploitative or condescending, but rather as scathing indictments of the system that ruined these people's lives. Tori and Lokita is no different, with quite possibly the Dardenne brothers' angriest take on social injustice and bureaucracy in contemporary Western Europe. Propelled by two achingly naked performances by Pablo Schills and Jolie Mbundu, the Dardenne brothers prove that their vigor for social change is anything but extinguished. 11. Broker. If you've been watching my videos since last May, you're probably shocked that this, the film I so handily claimed as the best film of the year, is so low on the list. And no, it isn't from 10 other movies just being absolutely perfect, but rather from a bit of taming in my perspective that came with lots of time and a wake-up call of a rewatch. True, Hirokazu Koreeda is retreading a lot of familiar ground, and no, he isn't doing it better than he ever has before. But you know what? I stand by my claim that Broker tackles the same sensitivity that marks Koreeda's best work, with enough pointed focus to earn it a worthy position in his film canon. In any case, Broker, like his best films, brings forth one of the most well-rounded set of characters you're likely to find in any film this year, imbuing everyone with purpose and complexities that only feel inconsistent in ways that real people are. Sprinkle in some Song Kang-ho in an appropriately award-winning turn, and you can't really hope for much else. So without further ado, I present the top 10. Number 10, Moon Age Daydream. How do you possibly encapsulate the legacy of one of the most daring artists of the last century? How do you sum up, in a mere 2.5-hour documentary, the entire life of such an enigmatic persona? Brett Morgen's answer? You don't. Bypassing the typical cradle-to-the-grave biopic formula, Morgen instead opts to distill the essence of David Bowie into a kaleidoscopic vision of archival footage and an otherworldly display of light and sound to capture the feel of the singer, rather than his life verbatim. Just as daring as the man himself, the indulgence of Moon Age Daydream is only matched by its audacity to tell you everything you could ever need to know about Bowie, all without anyone but Bowie himself having to say a word. The world of the documentary is, like the world of Bowie, one of constant risks and experimentation, so it's only fitting that the meeting of these two worlds would feel completely in line with that train of thought. Number 9. Decision to Leave. Obviously, I've changed my mind since seeing both films when I said that Broker was the best South Korean movie out of Cannes, and while I still stand by my statement that Park Chan-wook bites off a bit more than he could chew with this Hitchcockian mystery, nothing can ever be said against a man's choice to direct every frame of this film like it was the last thing he'd ever make. Dripping with romantic longing courtesy of Park's framing in both Park Hae-il and Tang Wei, Decision to Leave is far more captivating than it is exhausting, boasting a clear love of its genre forebearers to craft a modern exploration of trust in the technological age. There's something to be said about Park's fine line walking between schlocky genre trappings and pristine filmmaking, and while this may not be the apex of his talents, it sure as hell is a cut above most of his competitors. 8. Joyland. This is the movie I'd been putting off this list for weeks to see, and as you can probably tell, that was a decision I don't regret in the slightest. I'm almost awestruck at how Saim Sadiq takes such a simple premise, one that, in places, has been done many times before, and makes it feel so incredibly singular and personal. Part of that has to do with how closely this film adheres to his own Pakistani upbringing in the small town, but the empathetic lens on display here truly is one for the books. Joyland is a film that starts out following one person's plight and then gradually reveals itself to be about the imperfections of a whole group of characters, each one deserving of just as much room for leniency as the last. Another film that finds a strangely perfect balance between dark and delightful, Joyland feels like nothing less than the manifestation of an artist born to make films. This is the kind of film that makes you ecstatic to see what the filmmaker has in the pipeline next, and Saim Sadiq is definitely one we should all be looking out for. Number 7. Close. If Saim Sadiq's debut found him being incredibly empathetic in his depiction of a trans character, then Lucas Daunt's debut, Girl, found him being woefully misguided in his own. That Daunt would be able to make a truly searing instance of on-screen compassion just one film later was almost unthinkable, but Close was just that. Largely carried by first-time actor Eden Dambrin, who's absolutely spellbinding for every second he's on screen, Close almost revels in Daunt's unapologetic emotional manipulation. Here though, the dynamic between its two leads is so palpable that it feels entirely justified, as the floating sense of whimsy quickly makes way for something completely gut-wrenching. Without question, the biggest robbery at the Oscars this year was Close losing Best International Feature to generic War is Bad movie number 2786, but hey, at least it got a spot in my top 10, which is just as good. Number 6. Armageddon Time. A rewatch absolutely shot this film way up in my estimation, as James Gray's unembellished view of his own childhood just felt like a complete breath of fresh air in today's media landscape. Even Banks Rapata's stilted performance took on a greater significance this time, as a character hinted at possibly struggling with ADD, which plays into just how all the other performances around him are equally subdued and unwilling to overexert themselves for the sake of awards. James Gray just doesn't play that way, and because of that, his examination of his own privilege makes for yet another criminally underdiscussed film in his catalog. While so many autobiographical coming-of-age films leave their dark discoveries as a byproduct of a beautiful childhood, Armageddon Time brings its dark discoveries to the forefront, all without feeling self-indulgent or miserable. A true gem that got lost in the shuffle. Number 5, Everything Everywhere All at Once. I mean, do I even need to say anything? What else can I add at this point that hasn't been said about this film? What can I say about Daniels and their ambition, or their exhaustive style, or their heartfelt characterization, or the perfect casting, or the ingenious flip on nihilism, or the laser-focused editing, or the simple fact that everyone who's seen Everything Everywhere All at Once at least respects it, if not outright loving it? All this has been said before ad nauseum, and for good reason. This movie dominating the Oscars may not have been how I personally would have played it, but you can't deny how wholesome it feels, and how encouraging it is for the status of truly bold, original ideas in cinema. What else is there to say about this film? Everything. Number 4, Tar. Tar is the sort of film that never truly reveals what it is. Is it a prestige pick? A parody of prestige picks? An indictment on cancel culture? An indictment on indictments on cancel culture? This is another film that's been talked to death, and like Everything Everywhere, you can hardly blame people. Everything about Todd Field's work here is so painstakingly minute that it's no wonder this guy hasn't directed anything in 16 years. Cate Blanchett is, of course, incredible in the lead role, giving away everything and nothing at the same time, all the while Field is guiding us through one of the most patient psychological dramas we've seen in decades. There's something almost asthmatic about the rhythm of Tar, in that Field lets his film breathe with an uncomfortable pacing that feels entirely integrated into the type of story he's telling. Number 3, The Banshees of Inisherin, the peak of Martin McDonagh's power. It's almost inspiring how equally entertaining and wince-inducing the writer-director is able to make the story of a supposedly quiet friendship breakup, but thanks to his characteristically cutting dialogue and Colin Farrell's primally sad performance, The Banshees of Inisherin is just that. Even if the film feels somewhat like the unproduced play adaptation that it is, McDonagh's sense of scope has vastly improved in his 5-year absence from filmmaking, imbuing this small seaside Irish town with a friendly warmth and a creaky frigidness all at the same time. For a filmmaker so focused on the acidic nature of dialogue and character, McDonagh seems surprisingly very distraught at the depths people are willing to go to when pushed, and his latest film is the perfect treatise on that conflicted mindset. Number 2, Aftersun. Maybe the most obvious entry on any top 10 list? I mean, besides Everything Everywhere All at Once, what other film has basically dominated every top 10 since the end of last year? Well, clearly, I'd say that's for good reason. Charlotte Wells has such a clear-cut vision of the story she wants to tell that it's kind of astonishing she hasn't been doing this for decades now. There were quite a few films last year that coasted off the idea of reading between the lines, and if any film accomplished that attitude most successfully, it was clearly Aftersun. Paul Mescal and Frankie Corio are both completely luminous as people who could be just like any of us. Anyone can find themselves slowly discovering that their relationship with their parent isn't quite what they always expected, and it's here that Wells' patience and attention to detail pay off with one of the most emotionally resonant climaxes of any film I've seen in my own lifetime. Number 1, Layla's Brothers. And here it is, the movie I haven't shut up about since I saw in Cannes, and a movie very few people have actually been able to see since we got screwed out of a proper release. The more I think about Saeed Rustai's film, the more I love about it. I love how three-dimensional all these characters are. I love these Farhadi-style arguments escalating into the tensest discussion of financial strife. I love the wedding sequence, which just might rival that of The Godfather. Yeah, I said it. Everything about this movie just works. Even when characters make stupid decisions, they're never decisions that are made out of character. This is a tight-knit family that couldn't be more fractured, and I love how those fractures manifest across almost 3 hours, becoming something nothing short of heart-stopping. Taraneh Ali Dousti, like her character, pretty much carries this entire journey on her back, and one look at her pained face is enough to make you want to see her in every movie. Or at least, some happier movies where she can get a much-deserved break. But even then, Layla's brothers can be hilarious in how these family members interact, making you want to slap your knee just as often as you want to pull your own hair out. But Ustayi really struck gold here, and it's a damn shame that more people haven't, or can't, see the fruit of all his efforts. So please, if you haven't seen Layla's Brothers yet, consider this the only endorsement you can possibly need. Go see it for Ali Dosti's sake! So there you have my top 30 films of 2022. It's been a long road, and now it's time to take some time off to explore the next crop of festival darlings that'll no doubt make a huge chunk of my 2023 list. So thank you all as always for watching, and let me know what your favorite movies were of last year. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't, stay safe, and as always, I'll see you when I see ya.